Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Quantum Alignment Show. I feel like I haven't been here in a long time, so I'm really excited to be here. The last month we had our International Human Design Conference. Gosh, that feels already like an epoch ago, doesn't it? I've been leading some trainings, teaching some new quantum alignment system practitioners, and you all have had I think, the extraordinary experience of having some of our human design specialists lead the quantum alignment shows. So I know from the feedback that you all have had the distinct pleasure of enjoying some of our practitioners, including Tracy Coe, who came and talked about some of the mythology and mistaken thoughts about human design. We've had, in between all there, we've had chartathons, we've had all kinds of really amazing things happening on our page. So if you're on the Facebook page, I would encourage you to continue to come back here and check off. And we are always doing really cool, new and exciting things. And if you're joining on the webinar, if you are not a Facebook person, or if today is just webinar day, be sure to go check out the Facebook page. If you go to the left of the Facebook page, there's some tabs that link to videos. We have probably at this time 1,000 hours of all kinds of really cool shows and programming and things that we've put in here to support you in really finding the tools and the information that you need to really bring out to live the full potential of your life. So we're going to be talking today about a topic that comes up a lot in my classes, that comes up a lot in our membership. We have an online membership. If you want to learn more about that, that's at understandinghumandesign.com. That membership has with it several live Q&A calls with me and coaching calls with me over the course of the month. Plus, you get access to all of my human design courses. And in my Q&A calls in there and in the coaching calls in there, people always ask about their splits in their chart. What are my splits? What does that mean? Does it mean that I have split energy? Do I have a split personality? The part of the reason why I wanted to do this call today, because I wanted to answer those questions, because I think they're good questions. And it's a really, I think, interesting explanation to help you understand splits and how they impact you. And I think in some of the more traditional ways that we look at human design and we talk about splits, it's not always described or defined in a way that feels empowering, that gives you some kind of understanding and strategy to really work with your splits. And I definitely have talked to some people who have really felt doomed by their splits. So I want to undoom you today if you feel doomed by your splits. I want to give you some information and some insights that I think will help you interpret and understand the splits in your chart a little bit better. If you have children with splits, hopefully it'll give you some insights into how they operate and what that means for them. And most importantly, I hope it gives you some healing for those of you who have really maybe been hurt or confused by some of the ways that you've been taught to understand your splits. My intention here is to really help you understand that just because you have splits doesn't mean you're broken or that you're split apart. It just means that you're a people who needs people. That's really all it means. So without further ado, I'll get us started on our slides for the day. If you are joining in the webinar, Cindy has posted the slides for you over here in the right to the chat. Cindy, are you able to post slides on Facebook today, or are you still banned? Cindy's been banned for posting inappropriate comments.
I know, my comments are so inappropriate, but no, I was able to post them, and it looks good. So there's slide handouts also underneath the Facebook page.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Good. No more inappropriate posts, Cindy. All right. So here we are. We're talking about splits. And, I love this image. I pulled this image when I saw this. I was like, this is what people say to me when they say, I have a split. This is how they feel about it. There's this spaghetti in my brain. There's spaghetti in my chart. I feel like I have spaghetti all over the place. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I navigate through this twisting, twirling mess of spaghetti that is my design? So my intention today is to help you find a really solid path through understanding all the spaghetti of information around splits, and hopefully walk away with a sense of being empowered. So we're going to start first by exploring the mechanics of what does it mean when you have a split in your chart. So to understand the mechanics of splits in your chart, we have to start first by looking at what is not a split. So let's talk about being single definition. So when you are single definition, it just means that all of the things in your chart that are colored in are connected to each other. So if you look at this chart as an example, you'll see that the ajna, the green triangle, is connected through a channel to the throat center, which is connected through a channel to the G center, which is connected through a channel to the will center, which is connected through a channel to the sacral. And all of those parts of the chart are connected to each other. So that's what it means. If you look at your chart and it says single definition, it means you don't have splits. That doesn't mean you're not going to get something out of this presentation, but it does mean you don't have a split in your chart. There are three kinds of splits in human design. The first kind of a split is a simple split. And when you get your human design chart, a simple split is going to say on your chart split definition. It won't have anything else with it. It'll just say you have split definition. So split definition means that there are two distinct groups of energy centers within your chart that are connected within the group, but they're not connected to each other. So if you look at this particular chart, you'll see that the throat center, the brown square, is connected to the G center, the yellow diamond. And that center, if you actually took your pencil, you could literally draw a circle around it. It's sort of standalone. It's separated. That grouping of energies is separated from the bottom of the chart, where you have the root center, the brown square at the bottom, connected to the emotional solar plexus, the brown triangle on the right-hand side of the chart. And again, you could draw a line around that grouping, and you would see these are two different parts of your chart, two different clumps of energy, if you will, that are not connected to each other. The second kind of split is what we call a triple split. A triple split means that you have three distinct groupings of energy that are independent and not connected to each other. So in this particular chart, we have the head and the ajna, the yellow triangle and the green triangle connected, but not connected to anything else. We have the G center, the yellow diamond, and the will center, the red triangle, connected to each other, but not connected to anything else. And we have on the left side bottom, we have the spleen center, the brown triangle on the left, connected to the root center at the very bottom, the square at the bottom. And that particular grouping of energy is not connected to anything else in the chart. The last kind of split that we can have is called a quadruple split definition. When you have quadruple split definition, it means you've got four distinct groupings of energy that are independent and not connected to each other. So again, in this case, we have the yellow triangle and the green triangle, the head and the ajna connected but split off from the other parts of the chart. We have the will center to the throat, connected but not connected to anything else. We have the sacral, the red square, connected to the yellow diamond, the G center, but not connected to anything else. And we have the root center, the square at the bottom, connected to the spleen, the triangle on the left, but not connected to anything else. So you can either be a single definition, a split definition, a triple split, or up to a quadruple split. That's the most amount of splits you can have in a chart. So take a minute right now, just if you will, and look at your chart, if you have your chart with you. And just if you want to connect, just for me, just post in the chat if you're on the webinar, or post in Facebook, just post for a minute. Are you split? What kind of split are you? Are you a single split, triple split, quadruple split, single definition? Just look and see, what are you? I want you to see if you have a split that you are not alone, that there are lots and lots of people with splits.
So on Facebook, we had a couple quadruple splits, a couple simple splits, and I'm noticing a lot of triple splits that are in on Zoom with us.
So all the splits came to class today. All the single definition people stayed home, apparently.
So, no, we have quite a few single, well.
Whoever posted just a reflector, there's no such thing as just a reflector. Okay? You are a reflector. Boom, basta fini. That's big. All right. Okay, so hopefully now you've looked at your chart and you've seen your splits. The next thing that I want you to do is, if you have a pencil handy, just lightly, so you don't mess up your chart, or if you want to just sort of do this, you know, in a simple way without making a big mess on your chart. I just want you to notice or circle what centers you have that are grouped together but split off from the rest of the chart. This is going to be important for you as we go through and we talk about the rest of the material. And I'm worried about this quantum alignment show, Cindy, because I always like have more than enough content that I have to jam into an hour. And I'm like really nervous that I don't have enough content. And I'm also really wanting to go slowly because this is kind of a technical conversation, and I don't want to lose anybody, because it's really important if you have a split in your chart to understand what that means, because that's going to explain a lot probably about some big things in your life. So just take a minute right now and notice where your splits are. See if you can identify where the groupings of energies are.
So there's been a couple comments that have come in, both on Facebook and in Zoom, that says on their chart, their split says small split. And
what?
I know. Well, maybe that means their splits are really, really close together. Or
bottom line, if you're split, you're split. I don't know. We have a lot of different human design softwares, and they're all, I personally really love the genetic matrix software, because there are some really significant things in the genetic matrix software that give me a lot of confidence that it's valid and that it's taken into account daylight savings time in the United States, because that's a big, big issue, and not all the softwares account for that. But it's interesting to me how all the different softwares also kind of have different language. So I've never heard the expression small split. So good. So splits. Good. So notice
it's actually genetic matrix that says it.
Yeah, I'll have to go talk to John. What is a small split and what is a big split?
That's when there's a gate that's actually pointing to the split, so they don't have a whole channel.
We'll get into that in just a minute. So, all right. So hopefully you've looked at where your splits are now, and you kind of have a sense of what's connected to what, right? And so the big question that people always ask me is, well, what does that mean? How does that affect my type and strategy? Okay, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. So if you have splits, some of the most common things that you might feel or sense about yourself is you might feel like there are a lot of parts to your personality. Like you might be a person who loves antique furniture and mid-century modern furniture, and you're always trying to figure out how do you put both of those inside your house and make it look good, right? That's just a metaphor that might apply to all kinds of things. You might find that you have very different facets or aspects of your personality, different things you like, different ways of being, different ways of behaving. And you might find that it's kind of mysterious, like how come under these circumstances this part of my personality shows up, and how come over here this part of my personality shows up. Sometimes if you have splits, it can feel really hard to make up your mind about things. It's hard to make decisions, which is actually why understanding your human design is so important, and really living true to your type and authority, your type and strategy and authority is so important, because it does help you with this decisiveness piece. And it can sometimes make you feel like you struggle to know yourself. Again, a lot of times if you have splits, it can really feel like, depending on where you are and who you're with and what kind of relationship you're in, that all these different little parts of yourself bop up. and show up in different ways. And you don't always know how to consciously access the other parts of yourself that feel sometimes cut off or disowned. Or sometimes when we get in a relationship and we have splits, we feel like there are parts of your personality that your partner doesn't pay attention to, or there's parts that your partner should know about you, but you don't know how to explain those parts, or sometimes we kind of get frustrated with our partners because we expect them to be able to intuit all the parts of our splits. Part of why I wanted to talk about splits, as I said, is that in the conversations about splits in traditional design, they talk a lot about how hard it is to parent children with splits. Let's just be real. Parenting is hard, whether your kid has splits or not. It's not, it's not like something you can sit back and, of course you're going to enjoy it. I'm not going to say you're not going to enjoy it, but it's going to have challenges with it no matter what, because our designs are inherited from our grandparents. So your children are carrying the same energy design as your parents. So you're going to be forced through the curriculum of your parenthood to have to explore parental themes or family themes intergenerationally through your children. There's going to be a challenge there no matter what, and it has nothing to do with splits. That challenge is a learning and growth opportunity. Parenting gives us a tremendous amount of a schooling, if you will, about learning how to love unconditionally, relentlessly, and passionately in a way that you never get to love in any other kind of relationship. And if you have a child who has splits, that does not mean that that child is going to be extraordinarily difficult or problematic or challenging. So if you have a splits in your chart, you did not drive your parents crazy. So embrace that and know that your splits have nothing to do with how your parents parented you. And in fact, when we look at the next little piece, you might even find that the relationship between your splits and your parent was not even problematic. So please, 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 if somewhere along the way you heard teachings that said you were a problem because you have splits, please erase that teaching out of your brain. That's not true. People want to know, if I have a split, how does that affect my strategy and my authority? It doesn't affect your strategy and authority. Having splits in your chart is not going to change your strategy for your type. It's not going to change your authority. In fact, when you live true to your strategy and authority, it actually can help ease up some of those places where sometimes splits can give you challenges, That's a good word. So it's not going to change your type. It's not going to change the way your type acts. Sometimes people are like, well, I'm living out this part of my split, but not this part of my split, or I have this split, and in this split, I'm a projector, and in this split, I'm a generator, and in this, your type isn't going to change because of your splits. Your strategy and your authority aren't going to change because of your splits. And the biggest gift you can give yourself to help really navigate all the complexity and the juiciness of that diamond that is you, all those facets that you have because you have splits, the biggest thing you can do to navigate that is to follow your type, the strategy for your type and your authority. So the biggest place where splits really give us an opportunity for growth, where splits bring us part of our soul curriculum, where splits help us explore who we are and certain core human archetypes, is in the context of our relationships. For the most part, if you have a split in your chart and you are a generator, projector, and reflector, especially if you are a generator, projector, and reflector, your relationships are going to be influenced by your splits. The people you are attracted to are going to be influenced by your splits. And those relationships are going to give you themes to explore that help you connect a deeper sense of awareness of who you are.
Okay.
So, yes.
You were saying that this makes a big difference between generators, projectors, and reflectors, but reflectors don't have splits.
I'm sorry. Yes. All right. Forgive me.
I was wondering if there was something that I didn't know.
No.
Possible.
Forgive me. Okay. So reflectors never have splits. How's that? If you are a reflector, you never have a split. However, I will say that as I talk about this, that some of the things we talk about will be relevant to you and what you're drawn to with your own chart. But yes, I'm not talking about reflectors. Thank you for catching me on that, Cindy. Generators and projectors. Reflectors, though, listen carefully because there's stuff in here for you too. If you are a manifester or a manifesting generator, you still will have splits. You can have splits. And those splits are still going to impact to a certain degree who you're attracted to, but they are not going to impact you in the same way that it will if you are a generator and a projector. And I'll share with you why in just a minute. I actually think I even put that in a slide this morning, Cindy. So I'll have to correct my slide. All right. So before we start talking about splits and relationships, I have to do just a quick review for you. And that review is just basic mechanics in human design. Whenever you have a defined center in your chart, that center is defined because it has a defined colored in channel that connects it to another center. So you can't ever have a defined center just sitting there all by itself. You're always going to have a defined center connected to another defined center by a channel. And that channel, by the way, can be black, black and red, or all red. Doesn't matter. So it takes two gates to complete a channel. So every channel has two gates. So in this case, we're looking at the channel 1333. And you'll see that it takes the gate 33 and the gate 13 coming together in a chart to create definition in that channel. And that channel gives definition to the center on either end of the channel. Okay? So all of your splits are going to be connected by at least one channel. And the channel gives definition to the centers. There are three things that are going to influence what you're attracted to and how those attractions influence your splits. So we're going to unpack those three things in the context or through the lens of your splits. So the first thing that's going to create the dynamics around who you're attracted to and how that impacts your splits is your what I'll call your conditioned preferences for energies. So you have conditioned preferences for energies. So we're going to say hypothetically that this is your chart. Your chart might look different, but we're going to use this as our example chart. Let's say this is your chart. You'll see that this chart is a split definition chart, right? We have two distinctly different groupings of energy. We have head and the ajna at the top, split off, really split off, big split, right, Cindy? Big split between the head and the ajna and the bottom left-hand side of the chart where we have spleen to the root. So big split here. Let's say that this person grew up in a household and that this was the design of her mother over on the right-hand side. Now, when we are growing up, we are deeply conditioned by the energy of our parents, our siblings, the people who are consistently in our household. Those energies that are part of our family of origin feel familiar to us. So even if you don't have any splits, at least in the first few relationships that you have in your life, usually all the relationships in your 20s and sometimes into your 30s, those formative relationships, intimate partnerships that you have, your partner tends to have elements in their chart that are similar to your mother's chart and your father's chart or whoever else was in your family of origin. This isn't about gender, it's about who was living in your house growing up. So if you have two mothers, it'll be conditioning by both of your mothers. So the people who you grew up with in your house, those energies, because when you encounter them in the world and you're out in the world as a young adult, those energies feel familiar to you. You are drawn most commonly to those energies. If you have a split, the energies that your parent has that bridges your splits, I'll show you what I mean in just a minute, are going to be the energies that you prefer in your youthful partnerships. So if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see, just so you see the chart changed, on the left-hand side where the yellow stars are, these are the gates and channels that the mother has that would have given this person definition, that would have given them energy and connected them up to a center in some way, shape, or form. So the channel 1156 that connects the ajna to the throat, the daughter doesn't have that, but when she's in that energy, it connects her top split to the throat, which is super important, because really in the way, if you think of human design as kind of a game, the name of the game in human design, especially if you are a generator or a projector, is to get as much energy as you can to the throat, because anything that's colored in and connected to our throat is information and energy that we have access to, that we can talk about and share with others. So part of the frustration of splits is that we have parts of our chart that don't make it to the throat. And when parts of our chart don't make it to the throat, it's difficult for us to access those parts of our personality. So when we look at our daughter here on the left, or I'll go here, if you look at this chart, this is a person who has an undefined throat. And because this person has an undefined throat, there's an enormous amount of wisdom, an enormous amount of flexibility and malleability about what this person can talk about and share with the world. Ultimately, this quality of openness is a source of wisdom for this person when they learn to really work with this energy. But in relationships, and particularly when we're young and we're still trying to figure out who are we in the world, when you have this kind of a configuration where the throat is not connected to any other center, or in this case, this is a completely undefined throat, it has no gate activations on it at all, that means that this person sometimes can really struggle without engaging correctly in relationships. So we have a projector here. This is somebody who needs recognition and invitation, right? To really be heard. If this person's not waiting for recognition and invitation, it's going to be difficult for them to share who they are, to feel like they're being seen. And even when they get recognized and invited, because they have a split, sometimes people are going to be recognizing the head and the ajna. And sometimes people are going to be recognizing the spleen and the root. And it's only in certain relationships where both parts of that energy field get recognized and both parts get pulled together. And I'm going to keep unpacking that as we go through this. So back to the idea that the daughter is going to go out into the world as a young adult. She's going to be attracted to these energies, the 1156, this channel that connects the ajna to the throat, not only because it gives her throat definition and it allows her to talk about what she's thinking about, which is a beautiful thing. When she's around the gate 34, it gives her connection to the sacral. It's just going to give her a little bit more energy. It's not going to change her chart that much, but it's going to be something she's drawn to, and it's going to be something that gives her a little bit more energy. If we look at her father's energy, you see that her father is a manifesting generator. And we look at what she might be attracted to based on her preferences, because she's familiar with her father's energy field. You'll see she's going to be really drawn to the channel 4816, or because that really gives her the juice of connecting to her spleen to the throat and her root center to the throat. She's going to be drawn to the 34 because, again, that gives her that sacral definition. And she's going to be drawn to the gate 12, which her father has, right? Because that gives her the ability to bring her emotional energy up to her throat. So in those kinds of relationships where she gets emotional energy that gets to the throat, she gets to talk about her feelings. So that's not really bridging a split, but it's connecting up her feelings, just because I want you to see how that influences the way her throat works. So let's talk about the second thing that let me just summarize here, because I want to make sure everybody's got this. So the first thing, if you have a split that happens to you, is that you're going to be drawn to the energies. These are the ones that are going to be the juiciest for you, especially when you're young. You'll be drawn to the energies that bring your splits up to the throat. Okay, because those are good, and sorry, let me back up. You're gonna be drawn to the ones that bring your energy up to the throat, and you're gonna be drawn to the ones that are in your parents' charts first and foremost. Those are gonna be the ones that you're most drawn to. So if you're looking at your chart and you're looking at your splits, and if you have your parents' charts, and that's not always easy for us to get a hold of. If you don't know your parents' exact birth time, just run an approximate chart, and it won't be perfect, but it'll at least give you some insights. Run your parents' charts and look at where their definition is and see if you can't see a gate there that if you can then go and run the charts of all your past intimate partnerships, or maybe even your current intimate partnerships, you might see that there are parts of you that are dating or married to parts of your parents. It doesn't mean, and by the way, this is masculine or feminine. This is really independent of gender. We always talk about girls are attracted to their fathers and boys are attracted to their mother's energies. Not true. You're attracted to the energies that feel familiar to you. All right. So is everybody following along so far, or have I confused everybody so far? Good. Good.
It looks good.
Okay. All right. If you'd known this 40 years ago, Michelle, you wouldn't have had all the lessons that you learned from it. All right, the second thing that influences what we're attracted to in relationships and how that impacts our splits is we are attracted to energies that help us access power in our chart and brings that power up to the throat. All right. So, quick review. In human design, there are 4 motors. The will center, which is the little triangle, the little red triangle. The emotional solar plexus, which is the big brown triangle on the right. The red square is the sacral center, and then the root center is the square at the bottom. These 4 centers are the motors in the chart. If you have in your chart, in your natal chart, if you have any connection between a motor to the throat, that can be any one of these 4 or all of these 4. If you have a connection between a motor and the throat center, you have some kind of manifested energy in your chart. That means you're either a manifester or a manifesting generator. And what that means for you is that even if you have a split, it's really not going to affect you as much as it will a pure generator and a projector, because you have a motor to the throat. And anytime you get definition from a motor to the throat, it gives you a little bit of a different capacity for doing. You have an internal nonverbal creative flow when you have a motor to the throat. And that internal nonverbal creative flow gives you the capacity to be kind of a self-starter. You still have to, if you're a manifesting generator, respond, but it's different than if you're a pure generator or a projector. 2 types who really, if you have splits and you're a generator and a projector, you really, really, really are a people who needs people. You need to work in collaboration with others in some way, shape, or form to really get access to all of the parts from your split. Oh, yeah, I see. I did. I put it. This is what happens when you get up at 4:30 in the morning to do work because you're homeschooling. I'm fixing this slide. You all can, if you printed this off, fix this slide. Obviously, reflectors also do not have a direct connection from the motor to the throat because reflectors have no definition in their chart, but it's not going to impact them the same way because they're not going to have splits. Thank you for bringing that up, Cindy. All right. So generators and projectors do not have a direct connection from the motor to the throat. Consequently, and actually this is true for reflectors, they're always attracted to the gates that bring energy to the throat. So if you have a gate that brings a motor to your throat or connects you to a motor in your throat, that's going to be really important for you to understand if you have a split. And if you have a split, you're going to be most attracted to the gates that bridge your split between a motor and the throat center. So here we go. Let's look at these examples. In this example, you have a pure generator on the left-hand side, okay? This generator has a triple split. So the first split is going to be between the ajna, the green triangle, and the throat center. The second split is between the sacral center, that's the red square, and the yellow diamond, the G center. And the third split is going to be from the root center to the spleen center, the square at the bottom and the triangle on the left-hand side. This chart has two motors defined, okay? The first motor that's defined is the root center. The second motor that's defined is the sacral. So this is a person, and the third motor that has the potential to be defined here in this chart is actually the will center. And that's not technically a split, but I'm going to throw it in here just because I want you to see what you're attracted to as well and why. The gates 16, that's on the right, the gate 8, and the gate 13. Either one of these gates are going to bring the split energy up to the throat, bring energy up to the throat. So the gate 16 is going to complete the channel 4816 and bring the root center up to the throat. The gate 1 and the gate 13 is actually going to bring the sacral to the throat through the G center. There's one other piece here. This person has the 21 hanging on the will center, so that if they find somebody with the 45, it's also going to give them energy to the throat through the will center. If you manage to attract somebody, or if you're drawn to somebody who brings you energy to the throat, even if they don't bridge your splits, that's also a really juicy attraction, because you always want to get energy to the throat. And having a partnership where you get energy to the throat can sometimes bypass some of the challenges of having a split. Last but not least, let's talk about bridging splits. Here again, we have our natal chart. Boy, must have been really half asleep this morning.
Well, I think that's a really cool combo.
It's like the weirdest combo ever. I don't know what. Okay.
Well, you were channeling, and that's why the 12 wanted to come through.
Give myself that much credit. I just really think I twisted this around. Okay, so we're just going to move this. So forgive me, you guys. This has been a long week.
So just to be clear, the big chart, all you're showing is the bridge. That's not someone's natal chart. That's just to show the bridging gates that people might be looking for.
I'm going to fix this.
Ooh. Creative time.
Yeah. Don't get excited, Cindy. Okay, so I'm gonna put this here so you can see this. So I've fixed this on the fly. Forgive me, you guys. I don't know what happened. So this gate 16, not 20, the gate 16 bridges the split between the 48, the spleen, and the root center. So you're going to always be drawn to somebody who bridges your splits, right? Somebody who bridges your splits. The gates 1 and the gate 13 also, as I said, bridge your splits and, of course, bring motors to the throat. Down here, last but not least, here's another way. Here's another attraction point. The gate 53 down here bridges the split between the spleen and the root and the sacral and the G center. We like it when we get our bridges split in relationships, because when somebody bridges our splits, when you have two charts that connect up the splits, or when you're in the energy field of someone who connects your splits, then it feels like that person completes you, right? And we say that a lot in our relationships, right? When we say to our partner, oh, I feel so complete with you. You complete me, right? A lot of times what's happening is there's kind of a lot of truth to that. Sometimes we are in relationships where somebody brings us energy that bridges our splits, and all of a sudden we feel like, whoa, all these little parts of myself are all hooked up and synced up, and when I'm with you, I can access all of me. That doesn't mean if you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't bridge your splits, that they don't bring you a lot of love and connection. And what we see in relationships is that in relationships, when we mature into our relationships, we have the opportunity over time, if we stay in partnerships long enough, to really work through those initial phases of attraction, and we do our own inner work with our own sense of lovability and our own sense of worth, which is really the trick. You can be drawn to a partner that doesn't bridge your splits and be deeply in love and feel like you're in the right place with the right person. You can be in a partnership with someone who does bridge your splits, and if you haven't done that work, or if you've been, and you've allowed somebody who doesn't love you and value you for who you are, if you've allowed them into your life, they can be the perfect match mechanically and still be a jerk and still not treat you well. So I don't want to get too locked into, oh, who should I date that would bridge my splits? Because I hear people say that to me a lot. And I say, honey, date the person who loves you. Date the person who respects you. Date the person who values you. And don't look at their chart. Let's not use charts as a way of picking the right relationship or trying to find the partner with the one gate that bridges all your splits. Okay? You want to find the partner that treats you well, and you want to do the work internally so that you stand strong in your value and your lovability, and you don't settle for less than that. And you can have a crappy relationship come positive and a beautiful relationship. And you will be drawn to people who bridge your splits. And certainly, as I said, in our youth, that tends to feel really juicy. And it helps you to understand why sometimes in some relationships, there are things that you can talk about or things that you can access that you can't necessarily access in some of your other relationships. And it has to just do with the mechanics of how charts fit together. Here's a hack. You guys want a hack? This is a difficult hack for us nowadays because COVID has kind of wrecked my hack. If you have a lot of splits in your chart, and it makes you feel like your energy is difficult to sort of lock onto and get clarity on. Or if you're in a relationship where perhaps in the mechanics of the relationship, you don't get all those parts bridged or split, or, all those little pieces aren't bridged through the connection in your partnership. And you need to talk about something, or you need to access an aspect of yourself that is feeling ignored and left out. Go someplace in public but private. Like in the olden days, a coffee shop, right? Or a restaurant. Maybe you could still do that outside while it's still warm. But go somewhere public but private where you can borrow those gates from the collective aura of the place where you are, like the coffee shop. If you go to a coffee shop, odds are that in that coffee shop, you're going to have probably a good soup of almost all the gates in the chart. Go someplace where you'll find that energy and you'll pick it up out of the collective aura, and it'll give you the opportunity to work with that energy temporarily, especially if you need to, let's say, have an emotional conversation because you have a split where you're emotionally defined, but it doesn't get to the throat and you can't always access your feelings and talking about your feelings. To go someplace where you can hook up with that energy and then have those kinds of conversations in those kinds of places. The other advantage is that if you're having an emotional conversation in public, then you're going to behave better, right? All right. How close in proximity? Okay, you probably could still do it with social distancing. This is a conversation that sometimes is also in traditional human design. I think Ra used to teach that the aura extends about 16 inches off the body. It has been my experience. I actually think in Zoom calls from across the world, we can connect into a collective aura. If I do a reading for someone, if I do an intuitive reading for someone, if I do an intuitive reading for someone on the phone, not even on Zoom, I can connect into their aura from across the world. So, I think it's, I think we connect into people's auras much more readily and much more easily. So,
there's been quite a few questions that have come in.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to do this, Cindy. I'm literally almost done with the content, and then we'll open up to questions. So yes, if you have a partnership that completes you and they treat you lovingly and respectfully, go for it. I want to just bring your attention to something. If you haven't been here yet, we have a brand new store set up called the Human Design Store. In that store, there is a digital download that you can buy about the gates. It's the Quantum Human Design Gates, and it has all 64 gates in here with a detailed description of each of the gates, plus exercises and contemplations that go along with each of these gates. This is available. If you buy it, you get it immediately. It's a digital download. I want to encourage you, if you have splits in your chart, to really go into a deep dive study of the gates that bridge your splits, because that's going to illuminate for you a lot of things about your relationships and your relationship energies, because those open gates, those gates that bridge your splits, have probably been thematic gates in all of your relationships, all of your life. And they're going to tell you a lot about what is the soul curriculum of your relationship energy in this lifetime, because you're going to always be drawn to those energies. It feels good when your splits get bridged. It feels good. So knowing what those gates are and what themes those gates bring to you, and how you can, when you encounter those themes, really consciously say, wow, here comes this relationship theme again. I'm going to choose the highest expression here so that I'm getting out the most that I can, most learning, the most knowledge, the highest potential expression of love in every way in my relationships, by understanding the gates that bridge my splits. That's important. So here's the real challenge of splits. You ready? Because everybody wants to make this complicated, and it's not really complicated. It's not necessarily always simple and easy. I mean, it's simple, but it's not always easy. It's surrendering and trusting. People always want to know, like I said, they're always asking me, well, what kind of person should I date? What gate should they have? Trust the universe enough to bring you the right partnerships and the right relationships. Trust yourself enough and do the work necessary to deepen your sense of value, your lovability, your self-trust. Trust yourself enough to allow into your life the relationships that reflect your value. And trust that if you really need to access those energies, following your strategy and your authority by your type will bring into your field the right people that will bring you the right energy for whatever the right next thing is for you in your life. This is not something we need to engineer artificially. The universe already knows what you need, what partner you need, what theme you need to master, what thing you need to learn about, how to access, how to help you access all these parts of your chart and who you are. And the goal of your life is to learn how to be the fullest expression of who you are, to stretch the boundaries and the limits of the story you're living in, and to let the next right step, the next right person, the next right partnership be drawn to you correctly. If you enter into the relationship correctly, then the possibility and the potential of that being a really good relationship for you is amplified. If you try to go, if you're running around with your chart going, wait, what gates do you have? Oh, I can date you. You have this gate, right? Don't do that. Because really, there's perfection in the unfolding. And there's really such a gift in understanding the blessings of how it unfolds. If we try to get into our heads with it and figure it out and try to manipulate it and engineer it, we're going to get into trouble. Let the universe do the heavy lifting. All right, ready for questions, Cindy?
Okay. There's been some questions, and it could be just the way the chart is, but sometimes it's difficult to see your split, say, especially between, like, if you have the Ajna throat and then the G is there and you have a gate off. So sometimes it's really hard to see that one part of the channel is not defined. And so like Sally asked, can you explain more how we can visually see the split on our chart? I just see split in reading. And I think you went through it, but.
So I'll go back and I'll find that slide. So if you have just a straight up split, that's going to be, here we go. This is what I guess is called a big split, because in this chart, obviously it's obvious because there's a big gap between one grouping of centers and the others. Sometimes you can have all the centers defined, colored in and next to each other, but not connected. So I think what I would say to you is just kind of get in there, if you need to, with reading glasses or a magnifying glass, in my case, And just look really carefully and maybe even take a pencil and kind of follow each gate that comes off the centers. And look, you'll see that if there's a split, there's going to be groupings of energies that are not connected to each other. It is sometimes, if they're close, if it's what, I guess, what a small split, if it's a small split, it is sometimes difficult to see. So just take a pencil and just start following each gate, and you'll start to see where the split is. Part of it is just because of the way it's demonstrated visually on the chart. It'll look like it's hard to see it, but if you really kind of zone in and just go center by center, you'll find it. Next question, Cindy.
I have to unmute myself.
Yes, please.
I just noticed, Sharon on Facebook asks, I just noticed that I have a split in my defined and a split in my undefined centers. Never considered an undefined split. Do you have anything to say about that? I've never considered it either. So this is.
So I guess, are you talking about how if you have it split off from the throat, like it's a motor that's split off from the throat, but if you're attracted to it, it'll bring a motor to the throat. I think that's what you're saying. Maybe, yes, Sharon. Can you flesh that out for me for just a minute? Good. And then I'm just going to answer this question in the meantime while Sharon's fleshing that out for me. One of the questions here is, can you elaborate more on how we enter into a relationship correctly? Yes. Follow your strategy. So if you're a manifestor, you need to initiate it. If you're a generator or a manifesting generator, you need to respond to it. If you're a projector, you need to be recognized and preferably invited into it. And if you're a reflector, you need to take your time to jump into it. You need time to really feel your way into whether you really want to blend your energy with this. Coach Elaine says, my partner gives me the 1222, so I can have one connection from the solar plexus to the throat. Does this channel help me be more expressive of my emotional energy? Absolutely. The 1222 connects, let me see if I can find this on the chart. So the 1222 is this channel here that connects the emotional solar plexus to the throat. So that brings your emotional energy up to the throat, and because it's connected to the throat, it does make it easier for you to talk about emotional energy. I
haven't seen from Sharon yet, but we did have earlier, and a couple people said that they were very interested. If you could just say a little bit more about how we get our designs from our grandparents.
Okay, so you inherit major components of your chart from your grandparents' chart. So if you have the fortune of knowing your grandparents' birth dates, you could look at your grandparents' charts and then look at your charts, and you would see that there are similarities. They're not identical. It's not like they're going to be exactly the same, but there will be themes, gates that show up, sometimes centers, especially I tend to, open sacrals tend to kind of run in families. So you might see trends from your grandparents' charts and your charts. And if you're really fortunate enough to also be able to run your children's charts, you would really start to get a big, clear picture on the intergenerational chart patterns between your parents, you, and your children, or your grandparents, your parents, you, and your children. What this does from a conditioning standpoint is it kind of sets us up to really have the opportunity with each generation, or the relationships that we have with each generation, to really explore the themes between the generations from different perspectives and through different lenses. So you first experience this energy from your parents when you are their child, and then you have children, and those children carry similar energies to your parents. And while they may not act like your parents, you feel the themes of those gates that they carry that are similar to your parents. And so you sometimes get to work out some of the dynamics from your relationship with your parents through your children, which, as again said, sets us up for this sort of intergenerational family dynamic. So it makes total sense why we have, themes, psychological themes that run through our families. So hopefully that gives you enough.
Sam says on Facebook, I live with 3 single definitions and I'm a split wide. How can I handle it without feeling neglected, rejected, and disrespected? We all love each other and get along pretty well, except for that.
So I guess, Sam, what I'm hearing you say, if I can paraphrase this, is there are parts of your splits that are not getting seen or recognized. So I'm guessing that in your family, you don't get the connections between your splits. So my question for you would be, what's your type? Because I find that sometimes people think that the problem is the split, when really the challenge is more about relationships and type. So here's just some things to think about, and this may be something that you can lovingly educate your family on. If you are a generator or a projector, this is not when you talk, you have two different ways of talking. And I actually talk a lot about this in the Transform Your Relationship program, which is one of the programs that's available in the Understanding Human Design online membership community. If you are a generator or a projector, and this is actually kind of true for reflectors too, there's two kinds of talking. The first kind of talking is the talking that's just about moving energy. So you are going to have a communication style where you just need to talk. And you may not necessarily be talking about anything that's related to here's what we need to do, or here's the plan for tomorrow, or we need to organize this part of our lives. It's just talking. And that kind of talking is vital because it helps you move energy. When you don't have a motor to the throat, like a manifestor and a manifesting generator, you tend to build up energy over the course of the day because you can't take action. You can't initiate action unless that action gets activated by something outside of yourself. That's the nature of how the generator energy works and the projector energy works. So you're walking around, and if you didn't get activated enough over the course of the day, all this energy has built up. Now, if you're if you're a generator, you can burn some of it off through exercise, but in reality, a lot of it gets burned off through talking, because when you start to talk, then all the stuff starts to move out of the body. And in a partnership where somebody really gets that, you need partnership, or you need people in your family who can kind of hold space for you, be your containers while you go talk, 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 talk. And you have to do that sometimes at the end of the day, right? The second way that you talk is actually important communication that's solution oriented or planning oriented, where you're throwing an idea or a possibility out and you're trying to construct or build something. It's important, first of all, for you to understand the difference within yourself between these two types of communication. Because if you're just talking because you need to move energy versus you're really trying to have an important conversation, and you don't know the difference between the two, it can leave a lot of confusion about what you need and why you need it and what's happening and why are you not getting it. So being clear sort of on where you are with your own energy helps. It's really good, and it helps a lot if you can train the people you live with to listen to you in the way that you need to be listened to. So it's important for you to perhaps say, especially if the people in your life are manifesting generators or manifestors, that you inform them. Say, hey, I really just need to talk to somebody for a little bit. I just need to move some of this energy. Are you available for me? And they might not be, and that's okay, but there's got to be somebody who is, or hopefully you have someone in your life who can really just hold space for you, or who really has the same need for talking as you do. And that's also sometimes a challenge between types in relationships, because manifesting generators and manifestors, for the most part, don't have that same need for talking, and sometimes also don't have that same patience for talking. So you want to make sure you've got at least people in your life, maybe not in your family, where you can just kind of shoot the breeze if you need to. It's part of moving energy. If you have energy, yes?
I was going to say, Lael on Facebook says she's a manifesting generator 2-4. She has a 12-year-old projector who comes up to her when she's washing dishes and asks me, what do you want to talk about? And she says, yes, I want to be left alone in my two-time washing dishes. So she asks, how do I support myself and him?
So here's what you say. And I totally get this. I have the exact same thing with my projector daughter. I'll be doing something. She's like, so Mom, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, nothing. I talk all day for a living, right? So here's what you say. You say, oh, honey, being with you and connecting with you is really, really important to me. And I really want to have the energy and the space to really hear you. So right now I'm in the middle of doing this. let's set up a time, and you can set up the time. Let's set up a time and let's meet at XYZ time and let's really hang out together. And then I'm going to really be able to be present and hear you because I really want to hear you because you're important to me. So making sure that you create that space and make sure it works for both of you, and training them to go, look, and owning it in the way you say it. So you don't want to say, oh, I need to be alone right now, right? Or shh, right? But to be able to say, you're really important to me and I hear you, you want to talk. And I can't really hear you right now because I got to take care of myself first. I need my own quiet. I need my own integration piece first. So let me get myself to a place where I can really be present with you the way I want to be, because that's important to you. So, okay. So so if you have a kind of conversation, this is back to our person living with all the 3 single definition people in their life, my lovely little split there. If you have to have a conversation that's really important to you, that's not just a moving energy conversation, then you need to engage those people in conversation correctly according to their strategy. So you can ask them things like, you can inform them if they're manifestors, say, hey, I have something really important I need to talk to you about. Tell me what's a good time for you. If they're generator types, you can say, I really have something important to talk to you about. Is this a good time? Is there a better time? Is 3 o'clock good? Ask them yes or no questions. If they're a projector, say, hey, I really have an important conversation we need to have. I'd really love your feedback. Can we set up a time to really talk? I want to bounce some stuff off of you. Enter into your dialogues correctly according to type. And that allows everybody in the conversation to enter into the conversation with their energies aligned. And it helps over time. It doesn't always happen right away, but if you train yourselves to start having these kinds of conversations, it creates healthy connecting, and it amplifies the potential for really good, solid communication. So
I do want to bring up, because we did have a question about reflectors.
Yes.
Although they're not bridging a split when they're in their relationships, or when their relationship, they do have bridging gates that
totally
that's going to feel juicy with people, and that's correct. So I just want to make sure that was correct. So the reflectors are still looking for, they still might be looking for, or familiar with their parents' energy, because their parents
totally, all of that still applies. If you are a reflector, you will still be drawn to energy, in fact, very much so. And you will still be attracted to people who have energies similar to your parents, and you will still be attracted to people who bring motors to the throat. That's going to be the biggest piece for you. And Sharon, I feel like in your original question, I know you didn't repost anything, but I feel like in your original question, you're talking about the motors to the throat piece. I'm hoping that answers that. So,
and it's after the top of the hour. Did you want to? I mean, this was very interesting.
So Mary Kay asks if all the gates I mentioned are in the new quantum alignment vocabulary. Yes, they are. And if you want to sneak peek at the gates, it's not going to talk about the types and the lines and the profiles and the centers. But if you want to sneak peek at just the quantum gates, go to the Human Design Store. It's humandesignstore.com. And the Quantum Gates booklet is in there, and it's not a small thing. That's a big, if you printed that up, that's a big, thick booklet that goes through all 64 gates, and it's a ton of information. So it's a nice way to reinterpret the gates for you. So Cindy posted the link in the chat and on Facebook. So Cindy, thank you as always for riding side saddle with me. It was so fun to be back here at the Quantum Alignment Show. I feel like I haven't done it in a while. I will not be here next week because I will be teaching again, but then I think I'll be here for a couple of weeks after that. The next time I'm here, the next Quantum Alignment Show that I am leading is going to be on the 23rd of October. I wanted to share something with you guys.
Ooh, prequel.
So this is a little pamphlet, a little booklet that I've written called Human Design and the Coronavirus. And it is a summary of the design of the coronavirus. Viruses, pandemics, always start with the sun in the gate 44 in line 4. So if we look at that as the definition of the coronavirus, it means the coronavirus started around November 3rd to 4th last year. Now, in astrology, we always talk about cycles, and there are cycles within cycles. We're coming up on a solar return of the design of the pandemic, meaning we're coming all the way around the cycle. to another cycle within a cycle. This cycle ends and begins again on Election Day in the United States. So we're going to be talking about or revisiting the design of the coronavirus, how that may have impacted, well, how it's influenced what we've been exploring and learning on a soul level this year. And we're going to be looking at what's going on the planet and how potentially is the American presidential election, which lands on the solar return of the coronavirus, how that's going to impact the next cycle we have with the coronavirus. So kind of juicy and deep and fun. This booklet, by the way, is also for sale on humandesignstore.com. So, or if you want to get the Kindle version, it's on Amazon. I think it's 99 cents. So either way. All right. Be well. Take care. Have a great couple of weeks. I will see you October 23rd. All right. Bye.